Hello everyone, hope you're doing well and thanks for tuning in. We have an amazing journey ahead and you're not going to want to miss a minute of it. Today's expedition takes us to the high plains of northwestern Kansas on a quest for history, knowledge, and maybe even a ghost story or two. And the afternoon will find us in the tiny hamlet of Oberlin, a welcoming abode that may have some secrets of its own to be uncovered. It's 4th of July weekend here, so get ready to have a blast. And it might get a little bit educational too, so put on a pot of coffee and get ready to have some real fun. Let's get started. Hi everyone, and welcome to Northwestern Kansas. We hope you enjoy 1800s frontier history because it's one of our favorites, and we've got lots in store. You probably have heard the old folk song, Home on the Range. But what you may not know is that it was composed at an actual home on the range in 1872 by Dr. Brewster Higley VI, a medical doctor from Ohio who moved to Smith County, Kansas to set up his practice as a country physician. The tiny cabin he lived in is still standing a few miles south of the Nebraska border and is open for visitors 365 days a year. You may also want to visit the Butterfield Trail Museum in Russell Springs, Kansas, a lovely old 1887 building that tells the story of the Butterfield Dispatch, a stagecoach service which provided safe and stylish passage for people and packages en route to Denver, Colorado. West of Russell Springs is Mount Sunflower, the highest point in Kansas. Although it's not a mountain at all, it's completely flat. It just has an elevated sea level, and it's just a few feet away from the Colorado border. The exact spot is marked with a makeshift monument, and there's also a small box of library materials where people can exchange books. And it also has a picnic table where visitors can sit and read. 15 miles east of Mount Sunflower is the site of Old Fort Wallace, which in the mid-1800s was the furthest outpost of the U.S. Cavalry and the last source of protection for Western pioneers. And it also served as the vanguard station of General George Armstrong Custer. Nothing is left of Fort Wallace now except the old cemetery, which is said to be haunted. There are other cemeteries and other hauntings in this region too, including at Victoria, Kansas, where 6 railroad workers were cut down by Cheyenne Indian bows and arrows on August 1st, 1867. The large headstone marking their graves went missing in the 20th century. But then, perplexingly, in 2003 was discovered at another cemetery several counties away. 15 miles west of Victoria is the Ellis Railroad Museum, a fun destination for telling the history of the Union Pacific Railroad. But the building is said to be haunted because in the 1950s, the museum had a small jail inside. And one day, in 1958, there was a huge flood in the area, and the town of Ellis was quickly evacuated. But they forgot that there was a prisoner in that little jail. Oops. Well, he's believed to be a ghost now, and visitors touring the location have seen a shadow that darts back and forth between exhibits. Also in Ellis County is Rome, Kansas, a ghost town which was co-founded by Buffalo Bill in 1867 and at one point had over 1,000 residents. But in 1876, Rome was attacked by wild animals that started a fire, destroyed the mill and its dam, and flooded the town. Back in frontier times, Rome was called the Walled City because its residents built an 8-foot tall wall encircling the town to protect it from Indian attacks. But just like Jerusalem of old, its fortifications were undermined in an unfathomable, almost biblical turn of events. And the town was razed with fire, just like a hot and dusty Gehenna. But just like Old Jerusalem, its walls were rebuilt in the 20th century, and the town site is rumored to have been purchased by a secret club. A mile away from Rome, Kansas is Hangman's Bridge, an old wooden trussed overpass crossing that in the 1800s vigilantes used for hangings. Famous buffalo hunters, the Clarkson brothers, wrote in their book about seeing a skeleton hanging off the bridge as they rode by. Presumably the remains of outlaw Jack McGee, who was hunted down by a posse after murdering lawman Frank Shepard. Another notable spot east of Ellis County is Bunker Hill, Kansas, where in the town cemetery is buried Spotting Horse, an Indian chief who is known for his life mirroring a very well-known Bible story. As a young boy, Spotted Horse went to join his father on an entrenched battlefield between Cheyennes and Pawnees at the fork of the Solomon River in North Kansas. A very tall and strong Cheyenne warrior named Alights on Clouds, because of his great height, saw the young boy approaching and decided to make sport of him, chasing him down in a horse-riding maneuver known as Counting Coup, a cat-and-mouse game wherein the mounted rider bullies an enemy being foot-chased. But as he was being run down, young Spotted Horse saw a bow and arrow laying on the ground and ran to it. Alights on Cloud laughed at this and knew he could easily chase him down on the other side. But what he didn't know is Spotted Horse had been taught the way of the arrow since infancy, and he was left-handed. The young boy rolled on the ground, loaded the arrow, pulled back, and managed a 1 in a million shot that pierced the mighty warrior right through the eye. The arrogant giant fell dead, and the Pawnee army behind Spotted Horse rallied their horses and swam across the Solomon River in a full-on attack. Spotted Horse then found a battle axe and removed the giant's head, stuck it on a pike, and carried it back to his celebrating village, where he was later voted chief, as it was believed he had been chosen by the great warrior in the sky. For many years thereafter, Spotted Horse enjoyed great success on the battlefield and many victories. But back home, treachery was afoot, and in the end he was betrayed by usurpers, who he once believed to be loyal confidants. And just like King David, at one point he had to flee from his own home like a renegade in the night. Spotted Horse spent the latter part of his life as a Skidee soldier, a group of scouts who assisted the Union Army in the 1860 Civil War, after which he found himself living in a city among the White Eyes, far away from his past in a forgotten world. And in retrospect, he saw the same haughtiness which had consumed Alights on Clouds had befallen him as well upon receiving his title of chief. In 1874, as an older man, he finally found reconciliation and messages of forgiveness in the Indian world, and like Moses in the desert, began his long journey home. But also too, like Moses, he would not see the new promised land of Oklahoma. Spotted Horse's health began to waver along the way, and at Bunker Hill, Kansas, he fell ill and couldn't go any further. A young Mormon man would sit at his campfire with him and read pages from the Bible, including the story of David and Goliath, which is said to have moved the old chief to tears. And as he closed his eyes for the final time and released from the agonies of this world, his final request was to be given a Christian burial, the scriptures being read over his tomb. And this request was honored by the people at Bunker Hill. And in 1963, a town citizen donated money to have a beautiful gravestone placed to remember the frontier legend. Another famous resting place, the Holy Cross Cemetery in Pfeiffer, Kansas, a small village which was settled by the Wolgadach, or Volga Germans as you may have heard of them, a Russian people of Germanic origin who in the 1800s immigrated to America to escape prejudice and persecution. The Volga graveyard is notable for its large crosses made of wrought iron, and people driving by say it looks like somewhere Dracula the vampire would live. And backdropping this icy cemetery is the Holy Cross Church, a bewildering Gothic masterpiece of architecture which towers some 160 feet over a stretch of empty plains. You see, around the turn of the century, the settlers of Pfeiffer actually became quite wealthy in their farming endeavors, and quickly erected the massive stone walls and dizzying spires of the Holy Cross. The irony being that this church is now empty. In the mid-20th century, the Volga sold out their lands and moved away, and the town of Pfeiffer now has a population of 10, most of whom are there to be caretakers of the Holy Cross, which has officially been reclassified not as a church but a shrine of the Catholic religion, and is open for public tours Monday through Friday. About 20 miles north of there, outside the ghost town of Emmeram, Kansas, is one church that won't be holding services anytime soon. On the side of a long and lonely dirt road sits the wreckage and ruins of the Sacred Heart Church. Destroyed by fire in 1998, possibly in a lightning strike, the town of Emmeram was named for Father Immerman Klauser, who was the first priest to serve the parish. Its cornerstone was laid in May 1889, and its first Mass was held on Christmas Day, 1901. In 1968, the church was abandoned as the town's population finally plummeted to 0. And on the windy, cloudy night of October 12, 1998, a ferocious fire gutted the once immaculate house of worship. It may have been a lightning strike, although the Ellis County Sheriff did not rule out that it could have been the work of a vandal. People visiting the church ruins at night say they have seen a shadowy figure lurking and leaping around. And people visiting the ruins by day agree that even 20 years later they can still detect the faint smell of smoke and the sulfur of hellfire. Another legendary haunting in Ellis County, also associated with lightning, is the Blue Light Ghost of Hays, Kansas, a somewhat large town with a population of 21,000 and a college called Fort Hays State University. In the mid-1800s, the town was an army outpost with over 2,000 soldiers stationed there. Also working there was a famous nurse during the cholera epidemic of 1867. Elizabeth Polly was tirelessly devoted to her patients and ran from bedside to bedside, caretaking for them as best she could. According to legend, when a badly needed shipment of medicine arrived on the week of Christmas, 1867, Elizabeth quickly administered doses to her patients and then asked the fort commander to send a detachment of men to share the remaining doses with a nomadic band of Sioux Indians camping a few miles away, who were also being affected by the sickness. The commander said he would consider it after the snow had melted, which was almost 3 feet deep in places. However, that answer wasn't good enough for Elizabeth, and the next morning it was discovered that the medicine cabinet was empty and Elizabeth Polly was gone. But that same night, a terrible blizzard had set in, and the fort was overswept by snow. It's believed that Elizabeth Polly did make it with the medicine to the Sioux camp, but she died from exposure soon thereafter. The Indians said because the ground was frozen, they laid her to rest on a small plateau outside Hays called Sentinel Hill, and covered her with rocks. In the spring of 1868, her resting place was moved to the bottom of Sentinel Hill, and she was given a funeral with full honors attended by the entire outpost. A few years later, when Fort Hays was closed, the cemetery was transferred to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. However, Elizabeth Polly's grave was left at the bottom of the hill. But something strange occurred one night in 1917 at a farm about 1 mile away. A man named John Schmidt said he saw a young woman wearing a blue dress walking across his field and entering one of his sheds. He ran outside and opened the shed door, but no one was there. Years later, in 1950, a highway patrolman was traveling down the road one night and said he saw a woman in a blue dress and white bonnet standing in the middle of the highway as he passed. He quickly jumped out with a flashlight to locate her, but searched as he may, he found nothing. Sightings of the Blue Light Lady ghost, as it came to be known, continued for many years, even being reported in the Hayes newspaper. And on one evening in the early 21st century, a mass sighting occurred at a baseball diamond on the western edge of town, when dozens of spectators saw a glowing and wandering blue light in the dark distance, floating and bobbing around in the exact direction of Sentinel Hill and Old Fort Hayes. The sighting caused so much buzz it was even reported in a TV news segment, after which skeptical faculty from Fort Hayes State University conducted their own investigation and concluded the blue light was caused by ball lightning, a phenomenon in which electricity collects into the shape of an orb in the air. Well, despite this conclusion, the legend of the blue light ghost continues, as some in Hayes believe the often seen light is actually the lantern of a young woman lost in a snowstorm and the echo of her memory. Sentinel Hill is still a popular spot for ghost hunters, although it is about a mile-long walk from Old Highway 40. The trail is marked with an arrow sign that says, "To the Lonely Grave." 100 miles away from Hayes in far northwestern Kansas is another spot which has been listed in an online blog as one of the loneliest places in North America. It's a former town in Decatur County called Canona. Founded by co-op farmers in 1881, the town had 6 square blocks, a post office, a bank, a church, and a grocery store. For over half a century, Canona thrived and was a happy home to farmers and families. Until one day in 1949, a tornado cut through the town and absolutely ravaged it. And now, 70 years later, all that's left are empty houses and broken buildings, slowly being reclaimed by the prairie. And there are many stories of the town being haunted. Not long ago, a duo of ghost researchers walking down the road reported hearing the faint sound of a man weeping and crying. They searched the town from afternoon till evening, but found nothing and no one. In 2018, Canona was named by the High Plains Journal newspaper as the loneliest place in Kansas. West of Canona on Highway 36 is the town of Oberlin, which is where we'll be visiting this episode. Oberlin is known for being the location of the last Indian raid on Kansas soil, when a Cheyenne war party attacked the little town on September 30th, 1878. The incident stemmed from years of turbulence, including the Great Indian Uprising of 1865, the Great Plains War from 1867 to 1871, and the Battle of Saline River, which happened in response to the aforementioned massacre of the Union Pacific Railroad crew at Victoria. In the autumn of 1878, the Cheyennes were being pursued by the U.S. Army for attempting to return to their ancestral homeland to go buffalo hunting, despite being removed and forbode from there after the Battle of Little Bighorn. The surprise attack on the little town of Oberlin shocked the nation and made headlines, because although the Cheyennes were fierce, they were also known for their great sense of honor. Years later, Chief Little Wolf expressed regret over this attack and said the war party had gone many days without water and may have been suffering desert madness. He also believed that prior to the invasion, the warriors had come across poisoned waters. And later it turned out this may have been true. In the 20th century, it was discovered that western Kansas has pockets of a substance called radium that, if mixed in water, could cause symptoms including temporary insanity. A cavalry of soldiers was dispatched to catch the Cheyenne raiders, but the Indian horsemen escaped by leaping over a deep gorge on the Kansas-Colorado border called Devil's Pass. 17 of the town's citizens struck down that day were laid to rest at the Oberlin Cemetery on Highway 36. On the website Ghosts of America, people tell of having strange feelings upon entering the old graveyard, including one person who said they sensed an everlasting presence at the burial site. This weekend, we will be visiting Oberlin Cemetery to pay our lasting respects and also investigate until we find some answers. Also this weekend, we'll be staying at the Landmark Inn, a Victorian-era themed hotel in downtown Oberlin that also has a fine dining establishment downstairs called the Teller Room. The hotel with restaurant has been called the Queen of Northwestern Kansas. And in other exciting news, we have been invited to the town picnic for 4th of July, being held this evening in a nearby park, and it has a full fireworks display and all are welcome. So please join us this Independence Day weekend as we travel to Decatur County for history, tourism, and to pay our respect and remembrance at the last Indian Raid Cemetery. And here we are in downtown Oberlin. How exciting! And by the way, we traveled quite a bit of distance to get here. We left early this morning from the Wichita area, and this was a 4-hour drive, if you can believe that. We went through a lot of prairie, so we understand why this is an oasis on the plains. Here you can see the Landmark Inn in the Queen City of Northwestern Kansas. Oh, and what a building it is. So stately looking, and over 100 years old. Tonight we'll be staying in the Fireside Suite, a room upstairs with 20-foot ceilings, a mantled fireplace, and we've also been told it has a nice view of the downtown. The Teller Room Restaurant and the Landmark Inn. Here in the original Oberlin Bank building. By the way, if you're wondering why the restaurant here is called the Teller Room, it's because it's literally a teller room. You see, this old building used to be the town bank in the early 20th century, and now it's standing here as a fine hotel. Well, it was certainly built to last. And you can even see some of the bank features inside the building, including the vault, which is now a gift emporium. So in a way, it's still holding treasures. And the early turn-of-the-century clock is still on the wall. Upon entering, you will also recognize some of the original counters and bank windows are incorporated into the modern restaurant now. We just love all these touches of antiquity here.
Cowboy gets a rest. Just think that they get some toast.
Hey, you're learning by cowboys. That is what they do.
Speaking of restaurants, we found a fun and cool place to stop for lunch downtown here. It's called the Reload Bar and Grill, a great place to cool down on a hot day. And on the menu they have burgers and fries and soda and also pizza. And in the back there's also a pool table and video games. It's just a great place to spend a Saturday afternoon.
You see this slice of pizza they come on the side of this thing right here?
Oh, no, I didn't see that. As you can see, we found this little park right by the highway here. And so we thought, since it's so sunny outside, we'd take our lunch to go so we could sit and watch all the trucks and cars flying down the highway here. And after lunch, we met a couple of interesting people. One was a lady that had a large water sprinkler. She looked at us and said, "Well, who are you?" And I was thinking, "Well, you look like Mary, Mary, quite contrary with your large flower pot. My goodness." And we also met a little old lady from England, if you can believe that, with no connection to Oberlin at all. She came to small town America looking for space and quiet, and ended up here in Oberlin and has stayed for 20 years. It's like a song from the Beatles' White Album.
Oh, we have a little man greeting us here. And, well, this is kind of a winding staircase here. How interesting, how interesting. The staircase just keeps going up and up.
Yep. Flight number 3.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Just trying to locate the room here.
Which one are you staying in?
I think it's the fireside. I think it's right
Okay,
here.
Enjoy.
Nice to meet you. I'm Tom, and this is Juliana.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Very festive pants on.
Hey, thank you. 'Tis the season. Yes.
Here we are.
Oh my gosh.
Fit for a princess.
This is princess material.
A room fit for a princess.
Are you serious? This is so magical.
Yes, a very magical place.
Oh. You know I'm gonna want to get one of these for the house now.
Oh no!
This is so wonderful.
Yes, what a beautiful room. And let's see about some lights here.
Okay.
Bada bing, bada boom.
Look at this. Milano cookies?
I happen to know you are a Milano cookie expert.
Yeah, I am.
Someone must have told them that you're an expert.
Check this out.
Oh wow. Is this some sort of card game?
Francis Cleveland. American Views.
Some sort of antique card deck.
Yes.
I believe these are scenes from 1800s Decatur County.
Oh. Hotel? It looks like the staircase towards the bottom.
I believe it is.
It does look like this hotel.
A Christmas scene here in the hotel.
We should put them back in their chest.
I believe we can pull these cords. There we go. There we go. Whoa, 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 whoa. Wrong way. Wrong direction, wrong direction. And the good news is we have a bellhop on duty. We have a bellhop who is waiting his commands. Bellhop ready to go. Is this a real TV or a toy TV?
I don't know.
It's wet instead of pouring, which is the regulation.
I've seen phones bigger than this TV. This is the TV. And it looks like we have some reading items here too. The distant beacon. Oh, we've been greeted by a teddy bear bellhop. And we have a welcome binder here. This will come in handy. All the tips and recommendations. Where we will be visiting this weekend. And I think this will come in very handy. And it did come in handy because through that book we found out about the Decatur County Museum, also known as the Last Indian Raid Museum. And we were very excited to go there, even though it means that we would have to leave our beautiful hotel room here. Oh, I just love this hallway. And as you can see in this shot, we have the bank building, which is very old here, and it's partitioned with the newer addition that's been added on. And you can see right in this doorway is where it's actually two different buildings you're walking through. And it's much bigger on the inside than it looks from the outside. They have a number of rooms there. And as you can see in the corner here, we had the hotel library too. We spent time in the evening reading some books. It was lovely. Oh, I also love this lamppost that's on the staircase here. And we enjoyed seeing this little German soldier right on the staircase. Well, he's guarding the place. And he's doing a fine job. And as you can see, I put on my sunglasses because I'm going into cool mode. I wanted everyone in this town to know how cool I am. And oh, how sunny it was this day. We were blessed with just beautiful weather. And what a town Oberlin is. So wide open, you can see everything. And again, we get another shot here of the two buildings. There's the very old bank building, and then the newer addition here, which in itself is a remarkable building. I mean, my goodness, look at this. And such a lovely courtyard area that we had here in the back too. And we enjoyed spending time here. We sat out here during the evening and just watched people walking by, going by. We enjoyed the bird bath. It's right there too. All sorts of birds, and they loved it. And by the way, we loved our stay here. The hotel manager was so kind to us. He told the kitchen of the hotel to bake some blueberry muffins for us. I'm not kidding. The hotel manager gave us a basket of blueberry muffins. He said, here, take these with you. And the kitchen staff, the waiter, everyone was just fantastic. And the hotel manager also, without us even mentioning anything, he called ahead to the museum and told the museum lady that we would be wandering over there. He just intuitively knew that we would find our way over there at some point, and so he told her to get ready to give a tour because we would be on our way. He just knew that. Well, we did end up at the museum, but Julianna had second thoughts about going in there because she was afraid we would see dinosaurs. We've gone to the museum in Wichita, the one at the one in Scott City, and there kept being dinosaurs there. She hates seeing those monsters. But
Let's do it.
we did have to talk Julianna into going in there. As you can see, there is a highway that goes through town here. It's called Highway 36. It spans the length of northern Kansas right along the edge there. And so you see a lot of trucks going by because this is the main transportation highway. And this museum lady told us that, yes, there are actually dinosaurs in the museum because there's a lot of fossils here because we're at the southern tip of the Black Hills that are in Wyoming and Colorado and Kansas. And she gave us a map and told us where to stay away from if we didn't want to see dinosaurs. So we love maps. Maps it makes it so fun. Oh, wow.
Oh my!
This is not a replica, this is a real. Wow. This dress was worn by Elizabeth Meade Mix to the inauguration of Theodore Roosevelt. Very historical. This antique furniture, are you kidding me? Wow, this china set. This china was made in the 1800s. This doily says 1919 on it. Wow. We have some authentic pieces here today.
Whoa.
Quilt making was a very big thing for the German settlers that came to the Midwest. You may notice that a lot of barns almost have something that looks like a quilt on the front of them as a design. It's just a way that some of the immigrants would identify themselves to others. And a lot of tradition there. And this is the Indian Raid Room. Commemorating the 1878 Indian raid upon the town of Oberlin. As you can see, the room is full of artifacts from 1878. Native American armor.
It's made of buffalo ribs. Interesting.
Yep. It's a heavy stone just tied to a stick. And clothing made out of buffalo. This thing, my goodness. Children's toys. As you may remember in the movie Back to the Future 3, where the character Marty is wearing tennis shoes when he traveled from the future, people keep asking him why he was wearing moccasins.
Very similar to modern tennis shoes.
Yes.
And here we have a topographical map of the actual locations of the Cheyenne raid on Oberlin and the various residences that were hit. Here we have the North Fork and South Fork of Prairie Dog Creek, Beaver Creek, and the skirmishes that took place on that fateful day in 1878. These are some of the town citizens who were killed in the Cheyenne raid. And a list of all those here in town who were killed. And here is the memorial that was erected for the victims of the raid. Old black and white photo from the 1800s, and it still stands to this day. You can see the old buildings in the background there. A beautiful painting of the cavalry that chased after them. And here we have a picture of Elephant Rock, not far away from here, where Buffalo Bill had a gunfight with Native Americans, and he wrote a newspaper article about it. It's featured in magazines. And here we have a nice map of the Black Hills, which run from the Nebraska state line down past Dodge City, and the various creeks and so forth. And here we have another map of cavalry battles against Native Americans. And we're right here. We have battles here, here, and here. And here we have a commemorative plate with a map of the battle scene. Beautiful treasures. And here we have a small exhibit dedicated to the ghost town of Canona. A small town which once existed nearby, and it is now a ghost town. But at one time, it was a hustlin' and bustlin' place that suffered severe setbacks and never recovered. Here is the Canona Church. Scenes from early Canona. Here is the town plat. The town post office. And here we have scenes of devastation from the tornado, which sadly Canona did not survive. Nothing is left. It was wiped out, and only relics remain. Wow. so nice under this tree.
Perfect weather.
Found a house for an elf. This is a fire station for elves.
Oh my!
And yes, this does look like a perfect gas station that would be operated by elves, but in reality, it's a very old gas station. 100 years old, possibly, and it really has that old-fashioned look. Well, we took a peek inside, but inside it kind of has that old welcome to Mayberry feeling, and so Julianna, she liked the gumball machine there, but she said, well, I don't like all these old gas cans. I wish they would just throw those away. She said, they're too old, get rid of them. But the elves will continue their work in the gas station. And we just enjoyed seeing that wonderful old building here. Now this is the schoolhouse, as you can see by the old play equipment outside. And this was a very authentic building. And as you can see, some of the antique touches are still on the building. They moved all these buildings and grouped them together, but these are the authentic buildings from the old 1800s turn of the century. Look at that old map. My goodness, and that was the teacher's office. That's where the principal would sit. And, wow, imagine being in this old classroom. It's like something from Little House on the Prairie. My goodness, there's George Washington. Now, we have this old book from the turn of the century here that has the picture of the Pilgrims, and you may say, oh, what a disaster, some child took crayons to it. And I suppose they did, but to me, I felt it added something. Look at that. It really makes this old faded page pop. So I enjoyed the crayons. I thought that was an unusual touch, of a very bold, thing to do. I guess it ruined the book. I thought it made it better. And we have a nice portrait there. Here we have a book that Julianna thought would be a good read. It was about a dog and his friend. Now outside here, it was a nice picnic area for people going through the museum, and you can see the picnic table there is made out of old tractor parts. Everything was fashioned there from parts from tractors, and it's very fitting with Oberlin because this is an agricultural community. So we enjoyed seeing that. Oh, what a day. Look at this breezy weather. So enjoyable. And they had a nice sidewalk path that went all around this area here. Many buildings. We didn't even go into all the buildings because Julianna felt that some of them would be too scary. The ones that had, monsters with teeth in there. She didn't want to see that at all. But we took a peek in here. Now this was just filled with antiques. Just a warehouse full of antiques. And you could walk around all day just looking at things like this. I think you'll recognize this building here. Yes, the famous Landmark Inn. What a building. Oh, we were so fortunate to stay in such a historical landmark. Oh, an incredible weekend. Look at all the treasures in here. Wow. You know what? This is like going into a high-end antique store. And oh my goodness, who was that? No, I'm just kidding. And oh, more. Oh, we have more surprises through here.
Wow, that church. It's like being in the town of Old Oberlin. Back in the olden days.
I do not think it's a coincidence that the sun hits the church so perfectly.
Yeah, it's old, but it's still going. This church was once located in North Hatter, Kansas, not far away from here. And it appears it was transported here.
A transported church.
Oh, how lovely. Immaculate condition. And we have a tapestry of the Last Supper. And a beautiful altar here at the front. Antique everything. Giant antique Bible. Giving sermons. Fire and brimstone, I say. The meek shall inherit the earth. The wicked shall inherit wrath.
I'm ready for something with some ice in it.
You got it. We will do it.
Although it's safe to say the events of September 30th, 1878 changed Oberlin forever, it also changed the Cheyenne people forever. After the attack on Oberlin, the tribe divided into two groups and would never be one tribe again. As so often happens in the desperation of war, the violence had spun completely out of control, and the atrocities that unfolded at Oberlin were too much for men of noble character to bear. Several of the tribe elders, including Dull Knife, Porcupine, and Wild Hog, said that they wanted to turn themselves into the army. Chief Little Wolf, although also regretful of the horrors which occurred, said that they must continue fleeing and that he would never surrender to his enemies. And so the group was divided. Sadly, when Dull Knife's band surrendered a few days later at Fort Robinson, Nebraska, they were imprisoned in the harshest conditions. The silver lining of this long and sad tale is that in the end cooler heads did prevail, and when the Southern Cheyennes were taken to Lawrence, Kansas to stand trial for war crimes, the courtroom judge, after long contemplation, said that there had been enough war crime to go round, and the cycle of escalating retributions had to stop somewhere. The judge dropped all charges and told the Southern Cheyennes to return to their reservation. It seems that peace and goodwill won the battle in the exodus of the Northern Cheyenne as well, as reports came in that although the Cheyennes passed towns even smaller and more vulnerable than Oberlin, they did not attack anyone again and did not steal anything again, not even when they encountered lone travelers on the road. An army lieutenant called White Hat, who knew the Cheyennes personally, was sent to catch up with them and ask them what their intentions were. Little Wolf told him, "They are not farmers, they are hunters. They needed to hunt elk and bison." Little Wolf promised that there would be no more attacks if they would just let them be. The U.S. government decided to no longer chase the Cheyennes, who then settled in the Black Hills, which became their permanent hunting ground and home from then on.
We're here at the town cemetery, at the memorial for the victims of the last raid.
Among the 17 citizens laid to rest here at the cemetery, there is also another county resident struck down by Indians 4 years earlier, and also the grave of a U.S. soldier who went missing from the cavalry and was found later floating at the mouth of a nearby creek called Lamb's Draw.
Charles Canfield, first burial in cemetery, killed by Indians in 1874. Happened 4 years before the massacre. There is something of a ghost story here at Oberlin Cemetery, or a phantom story to be more precise. It's called The Strange Account of Fred Walters. George Frederick Walters was an Oberlin ox cart driver found dead and full of arrows by his wagon after the raid of September 30th, and he was buried in the cemetery a few days later. However, some years after that, a doctor from Oberlin named W.H. Goldsberry was traveling through Pauls Valley, Oklahoma, and couldn't believe his eyes when he saw the deceased Fred Walters living and breathing on a street in front of him. This was perplexing because the townspeople had carried Walters to the town morgue and had laid him in his casket too. The living dead man Walter said he remembered Goldsberry, but he had simply moved away. But he did not explain how a man that looked exactly like him was found dead in his cart, or why he didn't take his ox cart with him, or any of his belongings with him, or tell anyone that he was leaving, or by coincidence that he left the same day as the raid. In 1888, Walter's coffin was exhumed, and the remains were re-identified as indeed being him. However, the Kansas Historical Society confirms that a man named George Frederick Walters, formerly of Oberlin, Kansas, was also buried in Hennessy, Oklahoma in 1901. The strange case of Fred Walters has never been solved.
I know this makes you sad being here. We won't stay. Boy, that man was on a buggy.
Two cowboys in nearby Rawlins County found a fallen Cheyenne warrior on a lonely, windswept hill. Originally, they intended to take his remains back to town, but they became fearful that they would be accused of his murder. Days later, when a search party returned to the site, the remains were gone, possibly dragged away by wild animals or retrieved by the Cheyennes. Today, on that windy hill in Rawlins County, a small gravestone is placed where the warrior fell to remember the last American Indian to fall in battle in the state of Kansas. Although the 1878 attack on Oberlin was a complete surprise, some of the farmers and townspeople successfully fought back, including one man named Homer D. Colvin, who saw the horsemen on a hill by his cabin and thought they were hungry travelers looking for some food. But when he walked back out the cabin door, he saw 5 braves on horses charging down the hill. Well, old Mr. Colvin grabbed his long gun from behind the door and rifled off a number of shots, stopping the braves in their tracks and sending them scrambling back up the hill.
Guy who's enjoying this puddle here. Puddle on a hot day. Now it's dinner time at the Teller Room. I'm really looking forward to it. And shall we? Oh, hello there.
Hey!
We didn't know if we should go around the other way.
Which way do we come in?
Okay, is it okay to come in this one? Okay.
Oh, great!
Study 2.
how antique everything is. Hello, how are you? Hi there. Thank you. Well, I think one of these tables would be fine for us.
Can I get you anything else to drink?
Hey, well, you couldn't go wrong. I'd be happy to have any of those. Thank you so much. I was almost tempted to get the raspberry chicken, but I went with the steak.
Is it 'cause I thought it was because we were watching steak shows before we came here.
No, that's just a coincidence. Are you saying I was brainwashed? I was brainwashed into getting steak. I am so impressed with this steak, by the way. I've got to tell you, this is my kind of dinner. And somebody knows that I love steak fries. Somebody heard me talk about steak fries, and they came through on that. Hey, you got the same thing I did. You stole my idea. You stole my dinner plan. Oh, wow, you saw that on PBS. I remember when you saw that on PBS. You remembered something you saw on TV. A buttered steak, huh?
When I saw that, I stopped doing that.
Well, I am thrilled about this steak dinner. This is the perfect into a wonderful day for me. Today has been absolutely superb. This is my kind of steak. The steak is just so good.
It's so, you can cut it with the butter
It
knife.
is. Oh, are you serious? Wow. Well, this has been a 4th of July weekend we will never forget. And thank you all so much for coming along with us. Here in this distinguished location, it's like an interactive history lesson here. And by the way, we had the privilege of a meet and greet with author and researcher Jerry Robinson, a member of the Northern Cheyenne tribe, who was also staying at the hotel and doing a release party for his new book in the gift shop. The book is called The Cheyenne Story. You see, his great-great-grandfather was Little Wolf's brother-in-law, Bill Rowland, and their family's history and version of events has been handed down over the years and included in this wonderful new book, which was awarded the Wyoming State Historical Society's Book of the Year, and also the National Cowboy Museum Best Western Novel of 2020. And we got to read portions of it too because the book was included in our hotel room library. It's called The Cheyenne Story, and it's available on Amazon if you're interested in reading it. And the exciting news is that this is book 1 of a trilogy, so stay locked in. And he was such a nice gentleman, and we were so happy that the Landmark Inn sponsored him as an honored guest of the hotel. And as you can see, the town of Oberlin is very active in teaching and learning, while at the same time not being a captive of the past. The town of Oberlin decided long ago that they would not be defined by one day of war, but rather by 100 years of peace and kindness and goodness. The descendants of Native Americans and the descendants of homesteaders whose town was set on fire could have never imagined in those moments of terror that their great-great-grandchildren would someday be sitting at picnic tables together laughing and talking. It's almost like in the Bible, which says, God's thoughts are higher than our thoughts. If only we as little people could see in every daily moment the potentials of elevated human behavior and understand that of all the attributes the Creator gifted us, the greatest is love, which truly can cover over a multitude of sins. This afternoon, as we stood in the cemetery amongst rows of headstones of those who had received their heavenly calling, it hearkened us to the last words spoken by Pawnee chief and warrior poet Spotted Horse, as reported in his obituary on Christmas Day, 1874, and we'd like to leave you with these words this evening. Some safer world in depth of wood embrace, some happier isle floating far from waste, where freedmen their copious land behold,
where no one will torment nor chase for gold. Thank you all so much for being here, and have a wonderful weekend.
Maybe that, it was almost, maybe it was a Chinese lantern, but man, it was really booking it. It was really moving across the sky.